So I've been flying the TinyHawk 3 RTF kit for a few weeks now, and these goggles have served me pretty well, but how good are these really? So today we're going to put this to the test and compare it to the box goggles of the TinyGo 4K. So let's go outside, fly around for a few minutes and see how these two goggles perform. Alright, so we're back from the flight and I had some time to take a look at the footage and the results are interesting. So I'll start by asking, which one did you prefer? Did you prefer image A or image B? And which one do you think is the Emax and which one do you think is the GEPRC image? Let me know down below because I am curious to know what you think about which image performed better. Alright, so if you said image A was the Emax and image B was the GEPRC, you'd be correct. That was actually the results that I got. And honestly guys, I was kind of surprised. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so before we even start this breakdown, let's talk about some of the things here to know. The first thing here is that these goggles are both using the stock antennas that came with the goggles. They're both like linear rubber ducky antennas, and they're nothing special, but they get the job done. All right, the second thing to notice here is that I was flying this drone here. This is the Emax Baby Hawk 2. Pretty good drone, and I was flying this at 400 milliwatts, and the performance was too great. It was just too good. That's one thing to know is that if you have a really powerful VTX, then you may not see any discernible difference in the two goggles. So I had to do this test twice, and the second time I did fly this at 25 milliwatt, as you'll see in the screen recording there. Okay, third thing to know is that I had these two goggles in the same location. So that means I was flying with another goggles. I was using my DJI goggles with the Your UAV module on here, Really good module here. I did a full review on this, and if you're interested in seeing that, I'll leave it linked down below so you can take a look at this module, but pretty good for the price. The fourth thing here is I tried my best to keep the image as close as possible, meaning in the recording you can see that the images aren't the same or identical, only because sometimes when you record with these goggles, there is a tendency to have drop frames, and you can see that the video is not really in sync with each other. But I got it as close as possible within 1 second of each other. So well within 1 second. But it's another reason why it's good to go with something a little bit more premium so that you don't have any drop frames while you are recording. All right, so let's start with the breakdown here. So we took off Flu and the image was just comparable, very good, no difference. And I immediately went to the spot where I knew it was difficult for both my receiver and my VTX. And there's a lot of interference in that area. We have buildings, we have a lot of steel, and we have trees in the area. So that'd be a good place to see how these goggles perform. And just immediately you can see the difference between image A and image B. Even before I got to lower my altitude, you could see image B started breaking up a little bit more, and to the point where it just fell apart. Now, to be honest here, the goggles I'm using right here perform way better than these box style goggles. So that's the reason why I could still see the drone and where it was going. But honestly, at that point, both goggles did lose reception and it was almost difficult to see anything. We left that area and went for a more longer range line of sight flight. And sure enough, they both recovered okay. But as I got further and further away from myself, you can see the performance in B start going down, or image B start going down. And I tried to go as far as I could with the 25 milliwatts, but there was a point where even I was losing signal in my DJI goggles, and that's when I decided to turn around and come back to me. So those tests were pretty conclusive, and obviously I went to the most difficult place to fly a drone, obviously low altitude and then also long range. So yeah, that was kind of expected. Now flying close to me and within range, these things were very inconsistent. Just out of nowhere, you would get a breakup from one and another breakup from the other. Really no pattern, but obviously there was more breakup in the image B there. Okay, so we talked about the reception of these goggles. Let's talk about the image quality. Now the image is very subjective there, and for me, image B had a more, I guess, vibrant image. There was more saturation in image B than image A. If you look at the sky is more blue on image B, as well as the grass. The grass is more green, more saturated than image A. Now, that could be a subjective thing. I personally like the image of image A. It's a little bit more neutral, more flat, and more realistic to my eyes. There's nothing wrong with having very high saturation in your image, but you know, it is what it is. I didn't see any significant or discernible difference in sharpness, so very similar as far as sharpness, no big deal there. So having said all of this, what's the conclusion? Well, the first thing here is buy better goggles. Obviously these box style goggles, they do the trick, they work. In fact, this one here was my first goggles, and actually, I still use it to this day actually. This was my only analog goggles until I bought this module here for my DJI goggles. The second thing here to note is that if you cannot afford the more premium goggles, well, what you can do is just upgrade these antennas. And that's exactly what I did prior to getting my DJI goggles. I did upgrade these antennas with a circular polarized antenna and a patch antenna. And I did get better range and performance with this same goggles. And the third and final thing to note here is that these goggles are not made for long range flying. Now we kind of pushed these goggles to the limits by reducing the VTX power and flying behind difficult environments or flying pretty far. But the reality is that these things were made for ready to fly kits, and the drones that's included in those kits obviously perform more than 25 milliwatts, and the range on those drones aren't that great. So yeah guys, although these things were put to the test, actually both of them were outranged because I was using my other module here. But yes, these things were both outranged. The conclusion here is that these goggles are still adequate and great for the drones that they were intended for. So yeah guys, let me know what you think about these two goggles. Let me know which image you thought was better. And this video here was super fun to make. I had more fun than I really expected or really planned on doing it. So I might be doing these videos more in the future. It was pretty cool doing it. So let me know what you think about this video. And while you're there, please consider subscribing to the channel. Therefore, you'll be notified whenever I do drop a new FPV video. So anyways, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!